and in today's video I'm going to show you how to sew this incredible V shawl neckline. It's so easy and it looks a lot harder than it actually is. So here's how you do it. So before we get too far into the tutorial, I wanted to show you what the final product looks like. I think it's good to have kind of a bird's eye view before we dive in so that you can see how the shawl works. There's a center front seam, and then the interior of the collar is sort of folded inside and the shawl part wraps around the back. Then there is a center back seam in the collar as well. It's also important to know that this pattern originally was just for the dress view, but we've added on a wonderful top view as well for today's Feature Friday. And keep in mind that all pattern updates and add-ons are free at Love Notion, so if you've purchased Olympia before, you're just set to go and re-download from your account at lovenotions.com. For those of you who haven't picked up Olympia yet, today's a perfect day to do that with this amazing new add-on. The collar is called an integrated reverse shawl with a V-neck, and it really gives such a classy and timeless look, and I think you'll find a lot of use for it in your wardrobe. So let's start with jumping into the tutorial right at step 1, in which we're gonna align the front bodices right sides together. There's sort of like a weird like zigzag sort of shape happening here, and we're gonna be sewing with a 3/8 seam allowance from the center front seam up to the pivot point and then all the way down to the bottom of the bodice or the shirt front. And once we've done that, we're gonna clip into the pivot point all the way through the fabric, but not through the thread line, so that we can get a really crisp edge there. And this is the center front and the very point of the V neckline. It's really important to clip all the way into that pivot point, that marked spot on the pattern, because if you don't clip all the way in, the collar is not going to lie correctly at that center front. Now what we're gonna do next is to take that center front seam that we have sewn, that bottom portion of the seam, and then we're gonna line up the collar portion of that center front and overlap them. And we're gonna sew this line together in order to make the collar facing lie flat. This is it from the front of the bodice pattern piece, and then let's flip it over so that we can see what the back looks like. You'll see that both of those collar sides are going to be pressed down and they're going to lie flat, but then that center front is also going to be enclosed, and it's just going to create a nice finished product on the inside. You'll notice now that there are a couple of weird jagged pieces sticking up from the top of these cut pattern pieces, and these are going to form the shawl collar that wraps around your neck, like the back of your neck. And these sort of have like a V point that we're going to be sewing together. So we're going to stitch and serge the center back of the collar with right sides together, and then we're going to press that seam open and then fold it. So let's take a look at what that is going to entail. Now I'm using a lightweight poly rib knit, which doesn't really take a press very well, so I'm just going to be finger pressing this seam open. This is the center back seam. I'm pressing it open and then I'm folding it wrong sides together to form the back collar of my pattern. Let me just flip this around so that you can see the view from the interior. So you can see I've got my collar facing and center front with that pretty V-neck, and then my center back. And everything is folded in on itself right now as far as that collar piece. I'm gonna go through and straighten everything up and make sure all of my markings are intact. There are 2 markings that are really important. They are marking the pivot point for when you attach the back pattern piece to the front pattern piece. So I'm gonna put a pin in here to make sure everything stays in place. I'm gonna stay stitch this section because if we do not stay stitch it, this part can very easily get stretched out. This is a shifty fabric. I need to make sure that nothing's going to be with handling getting stretched out, and so that's why we're gonna go ahead and do a quick stay stitch. And then we're gonna clip into these corners all the way up to, but not through the fabric. So we've got this line of stay stitching, and we're going to clip into the seam allowance at those corners where the shoulder and the collar are, and we're going to do it right up to the center of the circle marking that we had made. This stay stitching can eventually be removed, but it's important to do the stay stitching here because this is allowing us to create a more straight line as we attach the back of the pattern piece. So as we clip into this, it's going to make that formerly angular line into a straight line that can then be attached to the back pattern piece. So let's lay down our back pattern piece and then align the back bodice to the shoulders and the collar right sides together. And we're going to start pinning the back bodice to the front, starting from the outside of each shoulder and working in. So let's start by attaching at the shoulder seams on the left-hand side. And then stopping our clipping when we get to that pivot point or where the edge of the collar hits the shoulder seam. So we're gonna stop right here. And then we're gonna move over to the other side before we try to attach the collar around the neckline. So let's go to our right-hand side and we're gonna match up the shoulder seams, the back to front, right sides together. And just make sure all of this is aligning without any stretching. And we're gonna clip all the way up. And then we're gonna make sure that our centers are going to match by marking the center back with a clip. And then we're gonna match that center back up with our center back of the shawl. So we're gonna clip that all together. And then we'll be able to match up the rest of the remaining fabric around the neckline. We should not have to stretch very much here. It should all fit perfectly, but it does feel a little weird because you have so many different angles coming together. But as you'll note, at that marked pivot point where we clipped in, we are going to just attach the different pieces, the back and the front together, and then leave that spot where we clipped in alone for a little bit. And when we get to the sewing machine, we're going to just make sure that we pivot at that particular spot, and it should make everything come together seamlessly. So let's go stitch serge this back collar section and shoulder section. I like to stitch that section first, check and see if I made any mistakes, and then I go back and serge it. You'll also notice that I removed the stay stitching thread so that that is not in the way. I just have my regular sewing machine line of attaching, and then I have my serging over the top of that. So this is a really nice finished shawl collar. And I would suggest doing this stitching with the bodice front on top facing you so that you can be sure to catch those corners. And the serger step is optional, but I think it makes a really nice finish. And look at that, we have a beautiful shawl collar, but I think we're missing something. We gotta put in a clothing label. Ta-da! We did it. We sewed the shawl collar on the Olympia top and dress from Love Notion. Let's get a closer view of what this looks like on. I'm so pleased with it. Really, really happy with this top version. And keep in mind that there is a dress version for this pattern. That is the original view of the pattern that comes with both a knee-length skirt and a maxi length skirt. I think that the shirt version really opens up a whole new world of fabric choices because as you sew the dress view, you really have to keep in mind the weight of that skirt. So enjoy playing around with some awesome fabric choices for this pattern now. Another thing to keep in mind for Olympia Dress is that there are cup sizes for this pattern. That means that there's A through double D cup sizes, and cup sizes are not the same thing as your bra cup sewing sizes. And another thing to keep in mind for this pattern is that the ease intended for this is meant to be sort of like a tucked in top, although I can see many people being able to wear it untucked. It just really depends on the finished ease in your size range. Before you go, I wanted to let you know that we have a huge site-wide sale coming next Monday. It's happening in March 23rd through 27th. It's only 5 days long, and we're keeping it simple this time. It's simply going to be 40% off all spring sewing projects, all digital sewing patterns at Love Notions, aside from the very new Muse blouse. Everything digital is going to be 40% off, which is a huge savings. So that's March 23rd through 27th. You can use code SEW40 for everything digital, and it's only for 5 days. We are also going to be adding our print patterns to the mix for this sale, and you can get those patterns with no code needed for $18 and flat rate shipping. So there's another big savings and a lot more to love at Love Notion. We're keeping it simple for this sale, and we're just going to focus on the satisfying feeling of making projects that you love. So stay tuned next week for lots of live sewing where you can join us as we sew some projects in our YouTube live stream. Make sure that you join our list. It's the best way to stay in touch, and you can find all the links for everything that you need in the description box below. Bye.